Welcome to the Dental Decoders podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Rogars, and I'm here to help you crack the code on all things dental operations. Each week, we dive into topics to help you overcome roadblocks, streamline operations, and reduce team burnout. Whether you're an owner, a practice manager, or a team member, this podcast is for you. Join us for insightful discussions, engaging interviews, and practical tips. So sit back and relax as we crack the code on all things dental operations together. Hello, Decoders. Welcome to this week's episode of Dental Decoders podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brittany Rogars, and this week I have yet another wonderful episode for you guys. This week we are interviewing Jennifer Howard, who is a CPA. She's actually the founder of Accounting Results and Consulting. She is a dental-specific CPA. I know, doesn't sound like the most fun topic in the world, but not only is this an engaging conversation where we dig into all things dental bookkeeping, KPIs, ways to improve, but we also talk about things that you may be missing out on if you don't have a dental specific CPA. So this episode is fantastic to listen to, especially as we're getting to that mid-year point. A lot of offices are already starting to think about taxes at the end of the year. So this would be a great way to kind of ramp up that process and get you engaged in all things financials inside your practice. So a little bit more about Jennifer. I already mentioned she's the founder of Accounting Results and Consulting. But what they do there is they specialize in turning the financial tides for dental practices. As a CPA and tax strategist with a laser focus on the dental industry, Jennifer Howard doesn't just crunch the numbers. She revolutionizes how dental practices approach their finances. Jennifer has a knack for transforming financial chaos into clarity. Jennifer's expertise lies in crafting tailored financial strategies that spotlight growth opportunities and streamline operations, which, as you know, is our favorite thing to do here. Jennifer is the definition of a dental decoder and helping offices crack the code on dental operations. You are not going to want to miss out on this episode. Also, she's got some exciting news for our listeners. They are opening a few select spots for new clients at their firm. So this is like the golden ticket for dental practices and owners aiming to amp up their financial game and profitability. This is a very rare opportunity that they have open seats. So check out this episode, check the links in the show notes, see if maybe working with Jennifer is something that could help improve your practice. I'm so excited for you to hear this episode, and I would love it if you let me know what you thought. Follow us on social media if you don't already, and let us know what you thought of this episode. Jennifer Howard, welcome to Dental Decoders podcast. I'm so very excited to have you here. I cannot wait to introduce you to my audience, and thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Brittany. I'm really excited about this. I can't wait to kind of share what I do in my practice, how I help dental owners, and just get to the nitty-gritty of it all.
Yeah. We were just talking off cam, and one of the things that I'm really excited about is CPAs kind of have this like stereotype of being like very boring and monotone. So I'm really excited to have a CPA come on who is engaging and exciting and that the guests will actually enjoy talking to. So why don't you start by telling all of our listeners a little bit about you and what you do in your business?
Yeah. So my name's Jennifer Howard. I am a CPA. I've been in the industry for 24 years. That makes me feel really old, but it just is what it is. And I've done everything, primarily work with doing tax preparation, tax strategy, business consulting on the dental side, and then bookkeeping as well. So I'm the owner of Accounting Results and Consulting. I've been in the dental space for about 11 years now as a dental consultant. And yeah, that's a little bit about me and my firm.
11 years in the financial side of dentistry has to be crazy. I've got 5 years of working with offices privately, and I've seen some things. So I'd love to dig into that. So tell me exactly what it is that you do for offices, and tell me a little bit about the bookkeeping and why you think that every office should have a dental-specific bookkeeper.
So I think that what I do that's different is I go in, I get their books, and I basically use my chart of accounts. So I change everything so that it meets industry standards, right? So we're not comparing apples to oranges, because when you're trying to explain financials to a business owner, a lot of them, they didn't go to school for that. They don't understand the financials. So I've got to explain it in a way that they can understand. And so I make them look just like they do with the industry standard within the dental industry, and then make sure that we have everything coded correctly, accurately, all of those sort of things. And then I do annually what's called a benchmark. So I take the data of the practice and I benchmark it against industry standards. And I sit down with the owner, or I do a video where I review this with them. Some owners just don't have the time during the day with their practice, and so they prefer a video. And that's fine. I do that as well and go over the high level benchmark on that end. But it's part of our bookkeeping process. So there's not an additional fee for this. And so we go in and we take a look at what their industry standards are for the dentistries and then compare them to what their practice is at. And so that can let them know, are you spending too much money on labor? How are you spending money with your occupancy costs, your rent, utilities, those sort of things? And then looking at staff development, training. Am I spending too much money? What about marketing? What does marketing look like? And so marketing can look very different also depending on geographically where the practice is at. So a very small rural town where everything's word of mouth is going to have a completely different marketing budget than one that's down in LA. Right. So the marketing budgets kind of fluctuate, and we kind of know that within our industry and make sure that we communicate that when we do the benchmarks. We also look at dental supplies, what they should be spending on dental supplies based off of the gross revenue. And that's a really large area that we see people spending too much money on just because they're not the one doing the ordering. They just say, this is what we need. This is the type that I want. I want the specific type. But what are they doing in order to reduce those costs? And that's something where we come in, work with their staff in order to help them reduce the spending and still get the quality products that they want. Lab expenses, we take a look at those as well within their practice, whether or not they have a CEREC machine, do their own milling, or do they send that out, and what that looks like to them, and adjust what their lab percentage should be at with that. So overall, we take a look at the benchmarks for all of those categories, their overhead, and then what we'd like to see for the total profit within the company for the dentist is for that to be between a 35 and a 45% range. And that's kind of like average. Above average is 45 to 55%. I have some practices that are that lean where they're bringing home 45 to 55% of their gross revenue from the practice. And so we just kind of work with that, doing a dental benchmark to see where they're at, and then give them homework. Here you go. These are the things that we think that you could do to improve over the year. And, if they're like, well, contact my staff, contact my office manager, help them with that. That's something we can help them with additionally. So, but that's all included in our annual bookkeeping fees that we provide for our clients. I know that's a long-range question, but.
No, that's great. And that gives a really full picture. A lot of people that I am working with are coming to me and they're saying, hey, my CPA says I'm spending too much money in the labor category. We need to cut that. How can we systemize to make that happen? So I love that you have that full service where you can actually say, hey, here's where you're high. Here's what we can try to do to get these numbers in a more comfortable place so you can serve your patients better and also take home a paycheck. So
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's a really big value add, to the dental owner to know if they look at the numbers, they don't know if they're overpaying, for which category. And that's on us. We know. We can look at it. I've seen enough dental clients that I know what they should be. And so that's why I took it upon myself. I actually have had a couple of dental owners that have retired years ago before I got into dentistry, retired, and they weren't able to keep up their lifestyle in retirement, but they weren't able to practice anymore. And I felt like it was just a disservice for us to not prepare them for retirement. Are you putting enough money away for retirement? Are you planning for that? Do you know that when you sell your practice, you're going to have a large amount that's going to go to taxes? And then what does that exit plan look like? We work with them. We're kind of more of a proactive advisory perspective because we feel like, nowadays we've got the big dental chains going on, and they've got
Mm-hmm.
the benefit of having a full financial management team at their beck and call in order to streamline these processes and get everything flowing really, really well within those. I kind of feel like in order to compete with those and, give an independent dental practice more of insights is to just be more proactive with them and let them know what their success metrics are, and then drive into that profitability. And, so even though we communicate this with the dental owners, we're sending follow-ups with them and saying, hey, where are you at, on this, or how can I help with that? Or do I need to get you in contact with somebody that can help you out in this other area? So I think that's something that my firm does a little bit differently than traditional CPA firms, is that we have that proactive advisory side of it.
So, what are some common areas? You kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but what are some common areas where you're finding, especially when you have new clients come on and it's their maybe first time working with someone dental specific, that their numbers are a little bit higher? What are those common areas where doctors are overspending inside their practices?
A lot of times it's not necessarily that they're overspending, because the way the benchmarking goes is it's a percentage of your total revenue. So based off of that revenue figure, what are you spending?
Mm-hmm.
And so if the revenue is not high enough, then that really skews a lot of the rest of the numbers on the expense side of it. So most of the time when we're working as somebody that's not meeting the average, so we have 3 different categories on the benchmark. We've got below average, average, and then above average in their industry. And so if we have some of them falling into 2, 3, 4, the below average categories, it could be that they're maybe not spending too much money in those areas. It could be that their revenue is not high enough in order to offset those expenses, because there's some things that are fixed. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
have your staff, for instance. That's usually a fixed expense based off of the hours of operation. And so if your revenue is not high enough, then it could skew a lot of those expenses. And so we do take a look at some of the industry, looking at, okay, what's your case acceptance look like? Do you have too many PPOs? What's your insurance dependency? And taking a look at those, the revenue drivers on that end. I don't do any specialty into those areas, but those are areas that I talk about and look into. And then if we're having issues in those areas, I analyze the data and then say, okay, this is the type of expert you're going to need to do.
Mm-hmm.
We also can do a fee analysis, look at what their fees are. A lot of dental, especially new dental startups, they don't know that they can negotiate their fees with their insurance providers. And so we tell them that should be something that we do every year. They're going to send you the low ball figure. And a lot of them are just like, I didn't know you could negotiate. I just accepted it every year.
Mm-hmm.
No, you can go back, you can negotiate. You can say, no, that this is too low in order to provide standard of care. This is where we're looking at, and kind of go back and forth. And some of them end up moving to like a monthly payment plan with some of their patients, where, hey, we're not going to provide this dental service anymore, or the dental insurance anymore. But if you'd like, you could get on to a monthly service plan with us. We'll provide X amount of cleanings, x-rays, yada, yada, yada. And then this would be the rate. And a lot of times it's cheaper for the patient and way more profitable for the dentist. It's just a little bit more tracking on their end. But so we take a look at a lot of the revenue areas. Dental supplies, though, I would probably have to say is the area that we see people overspending in. If their revenue is not an issue, they're overspending on their dental supplies because they want what they want. That's not a problem. You don't have to sacrifice quality of care and the supplies that you're using. It's just negotiating, with your provider and saying, hey, I found the same product somewhere else. I want to stay with you. Can we get a lower rate? And so a lot of times there's a lot of money left on the table in that area.
That's really smart, negotiating with your current vendors instead of having to order from 10 different places to get the best rate. If you can negotiate a little bit and be able to stay where you're comfortable and still get a good deal, that's always a win. And forgive me if this is like asking a trade secret question, but what percentage do you want to see offices at for their dental supply? What's a healthy metric for that?
So on the dental supplies, a healthy metric is between 4 and 6%. So 4% ideally is the above average area. I commonly see people in the 6 to 8% because they're overspending in that area. and we want to see them at 5%. That's right at the sweet spot of where everything's going to be at. And usually you can get there without having to, like you said, to order from 10 different suppliers. A lot of them will work with you in order to, get more of their products with all, with them. So
Awesome. So on that same kind of conversation of like what are good metrics, I really like to talk about KPIs and how we can use our software to measure them. That's something that I'm super passionate about, and I know that ties in very nicely with the CPA side of things and looking at finances. So what are some KPIs that you recommend offices that are working with you monitor and keep an eye on?
So total production is number one. Most of my dental practices, I want to see their total production on a one. This is general dentistry with one dentist working in the practice. Ideally, 6 to 7 operatories with $1 million in production with the one dentist, open 4 days a week. And then the other thing is that average new patients per month. A lot of people don't realize that that's a huge statistic. If your marketing budget is low, I immediately go look at what's your average new patients per month, because you're going to have people, that change their dental insurance and so they go somewhere else, or they leave the area, or they pass away, or, just there's a lot of them that end up leaving the company after a while. So you've got to have a plenty of new patients coming in order to offset that and keep at your revenue goal. And so I like to look and make sure that we're right at around 15 new patients per month and kind of use that as a goal. And so if their marketing budget is too low and their new patients per month is too low, then I say, okay, how can we improve our marketing so that we're increasing the amount of patients that new patients that you have coming in, so that we can maintain that $1 million. A lot of times I see dental owners buy a practice, run the practice. They don't know any of these things about how to run the practice. They just go and do the day-to-day, and they're losing more patients than they have coming in, and their revenue slowly is declining, but their expenses are going up. And so then they make less and less and less. And that's when they say, oh, okay, I need a dental CPA, or that's when they start reaching out for a consultant. It's a lot easier to do that proactively and say, let's do this now. Like, even though my practice is doing great, I don't know what I don't know. And I need to hire an industry expert so that they can be advising me to make sure that I'm on track to stay at where I'm comfortable or grow my practice. Or if they want to hire an associate, what does that look like in their practice? And so I think that those are the main metrics I look at, is total production and then the average new patients per month that they're bringing on.
So I do a lot of work on the like revenue cycle side of dentistry, where we're talking accounts receivable and how do we make sure patients are paying their bills and how do we get paid from insurance. So do you have any like benchmarks or goals that you're looking at from like a collection side of things? Obviously production is king, but if you're not getting paid, you're working for free no matter how much you produce. So what does that look like in your opinion?
So I don't work a lot on the AR side of things, the revenue collections, other than reducing, if they're having insurance issues, reducing the PPO dependency on that end, increasing the amount of treatment plans that they're getting done. I do talk to them a little bit about collecting deposits up front when there's a large treatment plan going on, and then setting up ACH so that there isn't any follow-up that your office administrator needs to do on that end. But outside of that, I usually have them work with a revenue collection insurance specialist on that if there's still issues on that end with collecting, because things need to be automated in a company as much as possible. The more that your staff has to do and is bogged down with the day-to-day actions, the more that's going to get missed. It's not going to get completed. And when you're talking about revenue, you don't want to realize that 2 to 3 months later, you have not nudged this patient to pay. They've gone by 2 or 3 months without paying. It's a lot harder to get that collected at that point in time. So being very proactive and getting everything set up automated.
I totally agree. Automation is one of my love languages. I think anytime we can work smarter, not harder, is going to really make a huge deal on your team culture, on your overall collections inside your practice, and just on the overall health of your practice. So,
Yeah.
firmly agree.
Yeah. I mean, if you ask any staff, office manager that's there, what's the one part of the job they hate the most? it's going to be calling patients and asking for money, because then they're hearing a sob story or they're getting excuses, and that could just really tear you down. So if you can just eliminate that part from their practice, you keep your office manager happy. And what do they say? Happy wife, happy life. I mean, your office manager is like your office wife, So if you keep them happy and make their job as easy as possible, it's just going to trickle down to you.
Absolutely. I like to see the net production and the collections be kind of 1-to-1. So we're actually getting paid for everything that we're doing. That's the goal, right? And automation is a huge step in that right direction. So I could not agree more on that.
Yeah.
If listeners are listening to this episode and they're resonating with any piece of this, or they want to learn more about you, where can they find you to work with you?
So on my website, www.cpaarc.com, I have blog posts on there. There's a link on there that they can click on to get a consult call with me. There's a little questionnaire that they fill out just so that I have some key information that I know about them before I meet with them, so I can just be better prepared on that end. So that's how they can reach out directly to me, through my website. Also, my email, it's jennifer@cpaarc.com. And then I do have a Facebook page, and it's called Dental Practice Financial Transformation. And so I have a lot of free resources. I have a few guides on there. I do weekly lives where I talk about these sort of key issues that are going on with the practices that I'm working with right at that moment. So a lot of times it's about taxes. Sometimes it's about retirement, what that looks like. Sometimes that's about benchmarking, bookkeeping, just different things like that, knowing their overhead numbers. You would be surprised at how many times I get on a call with a client and I say, what was your profit last year? And they don't know. They have no idea. And I said, well, did you pay taxes? Yeah, I paid a lot in taxes. And so, it's like, okay, well, if we don't know how much we made, then there's a lack of communication going on there. So either A, the bookkeeper's not communicating with what the profit is, or just doing the books, sending the financials, here you go. And then the owner sends everything to the CPA. The CPA is preparing the taxes, and that's purely 100% compliance. So that means that the bookkeeper is not doing any inquiry. They're just going, oh, look, there's a new dues and subscription expense. And they just assume that you have a new dues that you have going on, and they stick it on there. How do we know it's not accurate? Maybe you signed up for a free trial. You checked it out. You said, oh, no, I don't want to do that. And nobody ever took it off. Like nobody said, no, I don't want this. And then all of a sudden your expenses, and if that happens over time and people are just doing compliance work and they're not checking in with you to say, is this a new, subscription that you wanted to keep on? Oh, it is. Okay, great. If not, then, we need to get in and get those canceled. So making sure that we've gotten all the expenses streamlined, that they're all what is actually going on within the firm. And then just doing that high level review. Bookkeepers think that the CPA who does the taxes is reviewing their work. Half the time it's not. They're just taking the work from the bookkeeper that they think is already reviewed and preparing a tax return from. And then all of a sudden, there's this huge tax bill, but maybe the firm's not really that profitable. And because the dental owner doesn't know how to read the financial statements, it's just really, people are going through the ropes of things, but nobody's actually taking a hard look and saying, are they really this profitable? And, are we spending in certain areas that are too high? And just making sure that they're all set up, because they work hard for their money. They have a large education. They've got some of the largest student loan debt that's increasing year by year. I can't believe in the last 11 years how out of control it's really gotten for dental owners to have to continue to pay those and get that debt snowball kind of paid down. So it's just something that we take special pride in, because we do everything. We do the books. You have a CPA reviewing the bookkeeping. We know exactly what's going on there. And then we're preparing the tax return. And then we're looking at it saying, okay, we know what your long-term goals are in your company. And so let's make sure that you're setting yourself up for retirement. Retirement's also a really large way that you can do tax strategy and kind of basing that on getting everything set up so that you're able to sustain your life in retirement and save money on taxes.
There you go. That's always a plus too. Business owners, I think all of us feel that a little bit. So
yes.
So,
Exactly.
as we wrap this episode of Dental Decoders, we always end with our signature question, which is, in your life and career, what has been your decoding moment or secret code that's helped you find success?
What I'm going to say is working with a specialist. We don't know what we don't know. And I think even as a business owner and a CPA myself, I work with coaches that help me run my firm. And I have gotten way more value out of working with them than if I were to just do it myself. And so I think that has just really resonated within my own firm and running my own practice. And so that's something that I've really tell everyone is get a coach as soon as possible. Get a coach, work with a coach, get somebody with industry knowledge that knows your bookkeeping, that can advise you, because just because you have a bookkeeper or a tax preparer doesn't mean that they know the specific strategy within your industry. There are tax strategies for dentists that are not widely known, and most of the time only a dental CPA is going to know. There's a very nice large tax credit out there for dentists. So that's something that we really pride ourselves on working with them with, is working with an expert.
I think it's a huge red flag if I'm going to work with some sort of coach and they don't have a coach of their own. I always say the best coaches have coaches. So
That's right.
thoroughly agree with that. And, if you want to learn more about all these tax benefits that you can get or how to maximize your practice, I'm going to put the links for all things Jennifer in the show notes so you can grab those. I've been in that Facebook group now for just a few days. I just joined, but there's so much information in there that I can even apply in my own business and finances. It's been just super, super beneficial already to me. So I hope all of our listeners take advantage of that. And Jennifer, thank you so much for your time. This was such a good chat. I learned so much.
Thank you so much for having me on, Brittany. I appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Dental Decoders podcast. We hope you took away a valuable piece of information. As always, don't forget to rate, share, and subscribe to help us build our community of dental decoders. We look forward to seeing you for next week's episode.